everybody. My name is Brian Holcomb. I'm the curator here at the Moss Art Center, and thank you for gathering today to welcome Erika Ranee for the closing of her show, How Are Things on My End? And it's also the closing day for Michiko Itatani's Cosmic Encounters show. So I just want to do a brief introduction to Erika's work here in the upper gallery after I introduce you to Michiko's show. And so Michiko's show is Cosmic Encounters, and it features like 7 oil paintings. I first met Michiko, or I first was aware of Michiko's work when I was an undergraduate student at the School of Art Institute of Chicago in the late 90s. Please, nobody do math. And I remember seeing these massive paintings in the Chicago Public Library, but they were these Michelangelo figures, but they were still like looking to the heavens, as I would say, like looking to the sky. And her work is kind of dealing with basically our human existence in the context of the universe. So a lot of the paintings that you'll see in the lower gallery show, I would say just pay attention to is like how there's all these things with architecture, these symbols of civilization, yet there's an absence of the figure in the work. So Erika, which here to my right, is like she received her MFA at the University of California, Berkeley, and a BFA from the School of Visual Arts. She's the recipient of multiple awards, including the New York Foundation for the Arts, an AIM Fellowship from the Bronx Museum, and also she was an artist in residence at Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture. And Renee's work has been featured in solo exhibitions at Klaus von Nichtssagend, which means nothing in German. I looked it up. Lesley Heller Gallery, BRIC Project Room in New York, and the Rubin Museum of Art and DC Moore Gallery. And her work has also been featured internationally at Wild Palms in Dusseldorf, Germany, and Bridget Mulholland Gallery in Paris. And she'll be in an upcoming group show at the Brooklyn Museum of Art celebrating their 200 years. It's called Brooklyn Artist Exhibition, and it opens in October 2024. And Erika's work was included by artist Jeffrey Gibson, who represented the United States at this year's Venice Biennale. And her work is included in collections at the Studio Museum in Harlem, Flint Institute of Arts in Michigan, the Crocker Art Museum in Sacramento, and she's been reviewed, her exhibitions have been reviewed in publications such as the New York Times and Art Forum, and she lives and works in New York City. So let's all welcome Erika.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. So I first met Erika and became aware of her work in a show that Shanique Smith curated titled Elsewhere at my gallery in Atlanta in 2008. And we'll talk about like the work at that time a little bit later, but I've always been a fan. But this current show, it's called How Are Things on My End? And it's became like a survey of work over the last 10 years. And we were, and I just, I kind of want to just kind of talk about like looking at this survey work, like this is the first time you've seen all these paintings together, and we were looking at slides based on materiality, and were there like any narratives or things that were appearing to you with like this material conscious like flow that you like to use in your work?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see it all together, because it does span 10 years, and I'm realizing that I've been using the same materials. I mean, some things have changed a bit. I was working figuratively, really still back at the time we met, but I have my regular cast of characters. So shellac would be one. I think of them as characters. Shellac would be one. Spray paint, always a collage element, and that's the information that I put in there. Like I'll put notes, or I'll use spray paint or a brush to write something. And sometimes these things are embedded, you can't even see the history of it. What's left over is the buildup of thickness of the layers. And that's my narrative, really, in its abstract form, is that I was saying yesterday, too, that my narrative is, say, this is the surface of the canvas. It's really just the buildup of the layers. It's in there, rather than, say, using representational images to create a story that you can read. This is built into the painting. And that's something that is consistent, I think, with all the work that's in this show. And except for maybe the works on paper, the smaller canvases, I don't have that. I don't use that same technique. They're pretty much, ink and gouache on paper. And those are more, I think, an exercise in small detail, small worlds, meditation, repetition, things like that. So that's more of a psychological experience. Also, you're working from the wrist, and I'm working at home with those smaller pieces, but the larger ones do incorporate more material. And that's fun because I can just grab anything in the studio, even something on the floor, like something like that. Like, oh, that might be good. So it's a building of history of things that I've collected. I have piles of collage material that I've categorized, like notes here, found ripped out articles, an old book. They're just piles of things that could possibly be added into the painting. And sometimes I'll be on the train or the bus, and someone will say something like, ooh, that's a good one, I'll write it down, and I might stick that in the painting. Mm-hmm. Or it might become a title for a painting. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's like a recycling thing going on in the studio.
Yeah, you've referred to it as like a time capsule?
Yes, I think of them as time capsules because it really is about a record of my day or my month or the year. It's all gradually built up into that, onto that canvas. And it's as I said yesterday too, it's a means to an end. All of that buildup is so that I can achieve the ultimate resolution of the painting. In the end, it does become more formal as I'm resolving the painting.
Yeah, and the shellac and the amber that you use preserves a lot of these debris that you collect. So you use organic matter and industrial printed collage and everything. How does that play between or relationship kind of guide your work?
I think I'm just one of those people that's all about dichotomies. So I grew up in rural Massachusetts, and I still have contact with that area. But I've been living in New York City since graduated from college, 87, 88. I moved to the city, so I've pretty much been in New York for that long. So I would say the industrial stuff obviously would represent my urban existence. And then, I have plants, dead plant leaves in the work. And, lately I've been using black-eyed peas, food, my hair, something more organic also enters the work. And I like how both of them can exist together in the work. That's basically my biography, my autobiography right there.
And so, there is also a range of scale in the work. And I was surprised to learn, and to correct me if it's not true, that you didn't start using works on paper until recently, during the pandemic?
Well, During the pandemic, it came in handy because I was obviously I was able to work at home, and there were a lot of galleries offering online shows. So that was a nice way to just keep going and keep participating in the art world. But I started the works on paper. That piece on the bottom right was one of the first pieces I did on paper. My gallery at the time, I think it was 2016, they wanted to, I only gave them large paintings, and they thought, well, we want to take some stuff to this art fair. It's a drawing fair. Can you do some works on paper? And I thought, oh no, that's daunting. I've never done that. I'm kind of I was up until then a large scale painting purist. So having to scale down to this from like a 7-foot painting was a challenge, but then I realized, why have I been afraid of this for so long? It was just a different energy to have to tap into, and I started to enjoy it. So by the time COVID came around, I really got into it. You'll see the other smaller, oh no, you don't have those. But in the show, there's one wall of works that I basically started and finished during COVID days. And they're all ink and then gouache and nothing else. I'm trying to be, with the small works, and I've just started doing small paintings that same size in my apartment. I did that for this summer show that I was in East Hampton at Duck Creek Art Center. And I don't know if you guys know the film director Lars von Trier.
Yeah. Okay,
so I'm a fan of his work, even though they're always tortured people. But anyway, he came up with that. What was it? Dogma 95?
Yeah, with the shaking cameras.
And he just wanted he challenged himself and his peers to really minimize all the techniques that they were familiar with. And I think he just got it down to like 5 or 10 rules to follow, like handheld cameras and, no special effects. So you had to really bear it down. And I'm kind of tapping into that with these works at home, because I only have ink and gouache. I don't have all of my stuff I can, pick up off the floor in the studio and throw into. So it's a whole new challenge, and I like that because it's yielding a different effect in the smaller scale. And it actually is kind of informing what I'm doing also in the larger works. Like, I'm not afraid now to be work small in those larger paintings to get more detail in there. Not so maximalist all the time, which I love too, obviously. So I'm like big and small, loud and quiet. I'm just full of dichotomies. I think that's me.
Yeah. And also, going on your film reference, it shows the evidence of the making.
Right.
And you, and what we've seen is like there's a lot of pores and stuff, which means it's like we can see, knowing material, that you're not working vertically. So, So how does that physicality of interacting with the canvas inform?
I love the physicality of the large scale. I think that's why I've always, that's why I started with it and stuck with it. I'm 5'10", I'm a big person. I come from a history of being an athlete. I was on the rowing team, volleyball, swimming, whatever. I like the athleticism involved with picking up a big canvas, throwing it all around on the floor, picking it back up. There's just something that's exciting to keep moving with the work. And that energy goes into that whole process. So I have to do a lot on the floor. There are times with the canvas is really big. I've been, thank goodness I took some yoga back in the day, but I'll end up on one foot, like trying to reach in there, find the balance. Right. And that's just kind of fun. I don't know. I'm by myself, so I can look as ridiculous as possible.
You'll knock over one of your dead plants, and it'll fall in the
I probably kicked one of the dead ones.
Just pour some shellac, and then we go.
that's my process. There I am. No, but the dead plant thing started when I had an apartment that had a loft, and I had a big, what they call money plant. And I am a superstitious person. And I'm sitting there just watching television, and this money plant leaf just sort of helicoptered down into my lap, and I was like, what does this mean? Am I gonna lose a lot of money? So I was like, I can't just throw this away. Symbolically, that might not work for me. So I decided to memorialize it in my painting with the shellac, which kind of echoed, how amber preserved prehistoric insects, things like that. That's fascinating to me. I love bugs and birds and all of that stuff. But so that's what the shellac is symbolic of, that kind of preservation. So, yeah.
So the titling of your work, I mean, it's also, and you can go on too with how the intuitive process of your painting, because sometimes, with just so many artists, conceptual artists and everything, intuitive, or words like beauty, or things like that, or trigger words.
Yes.
But there's a certain playfulness that we see in the titling. And just with the title of the show, could you tell the story behind that?
Yeah, I just started thinking, in this day and age, I have a niece, a nibbling, who is my sister's child, who identifies as non-binary. So nibbling is the word for, it combines niece, nephew with sibling. So Elisa is my nibbling, is at NYU Tisch right now. And then there's Yori. I'm so happy my sisters had children, because then I can enjoy this younger group. But I'm also as a professor of that age group, I see a lot of depression. I see a lot of this culture of, social media, where kids are just, venting about their sadness and depression, and it's about, how am I doing? How are you doing? How am I feeling? And it's very me, but also I need healing, I need help. And I just felt like it's sort of a catchphrase feeling for this time. Not necessarily even for that generation, but it just feels like that. And I didn't want to put a question mark at the end, because I just felt like it was rhetorical, but also a weird questioning thing. How's everything going with me? Let me tap into this. And, you have self-care, you have all these catchphrases too that go along with that. And so as I'm looking at the show, I also felt I had a lot of things going on in the summer. I was a little stressed out, and I'm like, how am I? So I thought, this will be me in 10 years. There's a 10-year phase of me. How are things on my end? And it's that's so weird. Why are you talking to yourself? So I just thought it was a layered little humor in there, but also pointing out, how things are to get to that point of asking.
So we touched upon when I first saw your work, and it was figurative based, and I noticed you dealt with more just socio-political themes in the work. That was when you were learning, or when you were at school at SVA, and I just wanted to share this piece from 1996 of what your work was like. I'll let you say the title.
Yeah, no, this is La 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 La. I was researching Black stereotypes. So I was trying, and this is 1996. It's about, 6 feet high. That's another big one. So, it was right. I graduated from Berkeley, 93. And then I moved to New York right after that. And there were a lot of fellow Black artists who were addressing stereotypes at that time, including my friend who I met previous to this, Ellen Gallagher, who deals with that in her work. So they're all found images. I didn't create any of them. That was the point. I wanted to just throw that image that's already been done. Look, somebody made this. And it's someone white who made this to demean black people. So this little character with the teeth is Bosco. There was a Warner Brothers cartoon in the 30s called Honey and Bosco. And I found this great book by a Dutch author. He did extensive research. I think it was like white on black. It's out of print now, but it was a great resource for me. So he had a lot of images, but there was one image he had in the book, and it was music notes, and all the little heads were black heads. And so I thought I'll just, I liked this echoing of those little black heads with the Bosco character, who predated Mickey Mouse, and that was Warner Brothers' answer to Mickey Mouse, I guess. Maybe it didn't predate, but it was around the same period. And I even did another painting called Honey Child, which was honey, and I found a little a fairy tale book in Amsterdam with a little white girl's body, and I put Honey's head on her body and called it Honey Child. So I was playing around with those images like that. This one kind of floats more. I usually had like a whole composition, something more grounded. These are really floating in the material. So that's the early stages of me dealing with that ab-ex kind of feeling with the paint.
Mm-hmm. And then you can, 10 years later, kind of shift into more like figure, but the material was like building up more and more.
That's right.
Canvas. But then you started introducing collage too. And this, like the work we're looking at is from 2008. It's called Succubus. And it was actually in the show that Shanique curated in 2008.
Yeah, this, and so that's Sleeping Beauty, and I took it right out of the Sleeping Beauty Disney cartoon. So that's her actual profile from the animation. And there's a gold mosquito. I started using a lot of gold. When I got away from the stereotypes, I just started focusing on gold as this commodity element and how layered the history of gold is, starting from African mines and how they've exploited the miners, and then how it comes to America and it's a status symbol. And I thought, I'm going to just use it as a character again, not spelling it out why I'm using it, but just to use it here. So she's got an afro of gold, and the mosquito, the succubus, is coming and sort of taking her life force as Sleeping Beauty, and I've put her in this nice little bush of flowers. So there's something sinister, but I just wanted to lighten it up with some Disney-esque flower action. But yeah, I really liked this one, but this is like towards the end of my representational phase. So now she's down to a head. I used to use lots of bodies, contrary to what you saw in the previous image. But yeah, I would do the full body.
And you were still painting your flowers as opposed to letting them
right.
die and putting them in
yeah, I was creating flowers rather than
yeah.
killing them.
and then kind of, so tell us about like the shift from like removing the figure from the work.
So she is definitely removed. I don't know if you can see her, but there's two little gold star eyes in there. So yeah, you can see that opening there. This was me getting away more from the sinister, so I did a play on Botticelli's Birth of Venus. That's what she looked like before. And then over a 10-year period, she's just disappearing, and that's me saying bye to the figure and hi to abstraction. So this is a transitional piece. I wouldn't say, it's my favorite, but it's very important to me because it was, just me like laying the figure to rest and trying to enjoy paint, which is what I really wanted to do. But I have to have a driving force to paint. Like I couldn't just paint for the sake of painting. Like I need to have some meat in there, some subject matter, something going on.
And these works, that were the figurative works, you said you started out with more of a plan?
Yeah, and then I was really mapping out everything. I was researching. I a lot of reading, a lot of researching. We were laughing last night about the periodicals and going to the library, but I was doing all of that before I'd even think about the painting. Then I was sketching it out, sketching out the figures. How do I want them to interplay? What's the message I want to do? How do I want to convey it? I want to make sure people see that I'm not complicit in this, in making these images, that I'm actually trying to make a comment or statement about them and against them. So that was trickier to do. But then so much of that research and that work I just felt like I couldn't unleash the way I wanted to with the material. So I thought, this is holding me back from being who I really am as a painter, I think. And so that's why abstraction just became the answer for me. I could just throw the paint down. I didn't have to think about working around the figures or the trees or the whatever I was placing in the painting. And now I could put all those things in there, but I can just layer them in instead of drawing them in and having this elaborate story behind it,
So it opened up to freedom. It's like, but you still worked large scale with some of the figurative work. But was that, it's like when you became more intuitive, like starting without a plan, like what were those first studio days like?
So exciting. Like I felt like I was on vacation, I was like, and I use paints in a cup. I really water them down. So they're very washy, lots of layers of thin wash. And as I mentioned Helen Frankenthaler yesterday, because she's did these massive pours, and that just, I don't know what it is, something about the water. I just felt a kinship with that approach to painting. And so I just took all the colors I had and I laid them out and I just threw them on there, and I thought, this is so wild. I mean, is this good enough? Is this enough? Like, what am I doing? But I had to just get that out of my head and just unleash and have fun with it. And then I started using the spray paint too as a way of drawing, this abstract mark making and just energy bursts. That was important for me to just get it out. I think it goes back to with that physicality, that athleticism in there. I always like to be moving my arms. And although this is my largest painting, single painting, and it's too wide. Like I have to get things on the floor. I have to lift them back up. So that was a challenge. Like I think my fingers barely got the edge. So trying to get it from the wall to the floor is challenging.
Yeah, that was about the same process of getting it in that space upstairs. was open the two double doors, taking out which fortunatly I was in a meeting when that was happening. But,
I couldn't get it back into my studio.
Yeah.
I'd made it in a studio and the lease was up, and I had it in a show, which was great. It was like this room is vast, and then when the show ended, I was like, oh wow, I can't get it into my new space. So I haven't made anything that size, and I can't fold things because the shellac will crack, things like that. So, but yeah, this was a way. I just felt open, but I also have this thing about me that needs order to go with the chaos. So that's why you see these, flat spaces, more geometric, clean lines. And again, that dichotomy of the wilder expressionistic and then the more considered fine line edges. And I don't tape. I'm just I don't know, something's wrong with me. I just have to do this like 100 zillion times rather than get a tape and make it easy for myself. But I do like knowing that my hand is in here from beginning to end, even with a little wobbliness. I have to live with that.
Yep. One of the questions that kept coming up from the students in all the class visits yesterday was like, when do you know you're done? It's like, when do you know you're done? Like,
I know. And then even Rob reminded me that, the backs of my paintings are just as crazy as the fronts, because okay, I'll show it, like, yeah, that's fine, and then I'll get it back, like, wait, maybe it looks better this way. So many different orientations, and it's crazy. Some of them are, I didn't even have space to write the final change of orientation. But it's tough sometimes to know. Like this one I felt I knew, maybe because of the way things are at the bottom, and it just felt like I just had a better sense of it. But most of the time I just have no idea, and I need interventions quite often.
Yeah. Yeah, and a couple of the pieces in the show, like Grandma, which we saw earlier in the slides, you said that took you 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, that was 2 or 3 different paintings and 3 different shows. And I finally, each time though, I just get an itch, like, I don't know, I feel like I could do, it looks good now, but I just feel like I need to get that thing back and work on it more. And then when it's finally done, it's such a relief. But yeah, there are several paintings that have taken, one took like 15 years. That was just in the show I had at Klaus, 2023. Yeah, it took about 15 years. I just put it away for a long time, and I'd shown it, and I thought, this has good bones. I can now, with an older, wiser me, I can bring that back into it and finish it, Yeah,
and that was also in response to another question we kept on getting. It's like, what do you get blocked? And,
yeah, and if you're blocked, I just told one of the students yesterday, like, just leave it. I turn the painting away, I put it away, start on something fresh, and just revive that energy again, so that I don't have to think about how stuck I am, or if I'm blocked altogether, but I have to still work. Because, that's the fun thing about being a professional, is that you got deadlines, You can't just, let me enjoy myself. So if you're working with a time constraint, I just get those cups and just start throwing paint. Like, all right, let's just keep it flowing, but just don't have a plan until the plan happens to pop in your head.
how many pieces at one time would you guess?
I have this great studio now. I have a big floor is more important to me than light, than anything else, really. So I have a big floor, so I like to work ideally about 6 to 10 pieces at once, and I just go around the room and just pour on them, because I have to keep moving. The paint is wet. I have to wait. It's literally a job watching paint dry. You really are spending a lot of time. I'm glad I don't work with oils, although I did say yesterday I want to try that. But the drying time, so if I can work on several at once, one's drying, one dries, and then I can start the whole thing again.
And what about your palette? Like the color choices. I mean, I know some of the materials are found, and dead leaves are nice, umber brown,
right,
depending on. But you have like a very wide ranging palette.
Yeah, usually bright, highly saturated colors. I have a little addiction to hot pinks. I've got to calm down about those. But I can't help myself. I love all kinds of art. And speaking of Ellen, I mean, she's very muted, and I'm madly in love with that work. If I try to mix a neutral, it's a disaster. It looks dead. So for me, the neutrals are incidental. I mean, that's really dirty water, my brush water. And I'm like, oh, that's the kind of muted blue that I need. But I can't, somehow I don't have it in me to mix it so that it's right, that it feels right. My natural propensity is towards those brighter colors, but I need the neutrals to calm that down, to just mellow that out a bit. So right now I'm madly in love with this ultramarine blue from Flash that I love. You see it in a lot of the works upstairs. And again, like I said, anything hot that's just like, I just did a smaller painting, and it's all like browns and olive greens, and I love it. And I'm just like, don't put the hot pink in there. I'm really forcing myself to try it. Like, Erika, just see it differently. See what you can do with that. And I'm glad it's small, so I can really, I mean, if it was a bigger piece, it'd be harder. I would have to rely on, my usual. But yeah, I don't know. And that's another dichotomy, like the loud color, but, temper it with softer, quiet, more muted.
And how does the color play in like the motion, or what feelings that, not through the physical, not only through the physicality,
right.
but in what you want that painting to convey?
Yeah. So again, I guess I've just turned into an energy painter. Like, it all has to come out of me somehow, whatever I'm feeling. So even if I'm angry, I'll get into that hot pink. The hot pink will be joyous. It can be like, I just want to mow over somebody. It's just because it's just fierce and it's strong, but it's also, it can be a little bright. Even one time I did a body of work and it was all just hot pinks and purples, and my studio was glowing, and I brought some people in for a studio visit, and we were all just like, ouch. Our eyes were a little, so I know that aesthetically, sometimes I need to bring it down, but it's just, I guess, my go-to impulse, and that is how I like to paint too.
One of the things that, it was in my interpretation of the work and still doing with the color, and you're mentioning of using these neon colors, is, and also I think too, you have this use of borders a lot on the side of the painting, is that I thought you were being influenced by stained glass windows.
And I get that a lot about my work, which I hadn't even connected on my own, but I can see it, and I'm certainly going to put the word out for a commission somewhere to some nice stained glass window pieces. But, and I like that. I love, because I guess, too, it's about light, and how my colors, I'm into that lately, like finding a light. There's a recent painting I did that I really liked, that I showed this summer, and it sounds hilarious, but I followed the light in that painting. There are two paintings I did, the one that was in Paris, too. There was just this glow that happened, and it was a thin layer, and I thought, I'm going to work around this and see how that happens. And it really does feel like this void or this entry point, like this glowing beacon, So light seems to be important, but the borders, too, that's kind of a recent development in the past several years. And I like, again, with the wildness of the paint, sometimes I need a little structure, a little order to that. So I found that I was just instinctively doing these lines. Some of it's looser now. I used to make them really tight and fine, but some are like that now. Some are looser. And as I explained to some people yesterday, I also realized there's always like an empty, unframed part, at least one, and I call it the escape hatch. Yeah. So you can get out of there if you need to. Yeah.
Just like de Kooning's excavation at the Art Institute of Chicago, where he kept working on that. And, well, I don't know whether he said that, but a lot of critics say there's like the little doorway in the bottom middle, and that was like his way to get out of the painting. Yeah. And it's just...
that would be me, and I love de Kooning too. So yes.
Yeah. So speaking of your trying to get a stained glass window commission, maybe you can use your mural.
There you go. Oh my gosh, that's the most exciting thing. Yeah. That mural, I just love you forever now. Brian suggested this, and at first I thought you wanted me to paint it. I was like, no. Oh God. And I can't paint on a wall. Everything has to be on the floor, or else all my drips are going to be vertical. So I thought the mural projects are tougher, but I guess, there's lots of new technology that looks amazing. I'm floating about that. I love that.
So what was your feeling when you first saw it, like coming in here just at that scale? And also these are composed of crops of paint. Most of the paintings that are in the show, but
yeah.
there's one painting that's not
Like
in
the
the show.
two,
The
where
two
am I
left
pointing?
panels.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
two left panels, but that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I just love.
Right, that wasn't a requirement.
No, right.
There are no rules. Is that
Right, there are no rules. But no, I love how that turned out because, as I said, I love large scale. So it just made me realize, I look good big. And I'm not, and two of these are from the little 12 by 12 inch works on paper, or, that's on paper, this one here, which is the smaller one on that long wall. Both of them actually are. And I was just looking up the Japanese term for that one. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the next one. Yeah, so there's gold. That's gold. And I mean, I haven't used gold in years, but my childhood best friend was Japanese American. The Suzuki family was my second family. And I think I just, that's part of who I am. A big part of my childhood was staying with them, living with them a lot for sleepovers and stuff. So I have this long-standing interest in Japanese culture, and I was watching, there's a channel called NHK. It's like a news channel for America that reports on Japanese news and events. And they did a story on this process called kintsugi. And it's a way to repair broken ceramics, like beloved old ceramics, and they use gold paint to trace the tracks, and that's how it glues together, and it's just this gorgeous thing. So you break your beloved ceramic, and instead of trying to make it look the way it was before, they yield to the fact that it's imperfect now, and they're finding beauty in that imperfection. And I love the idea behind that, because this piece was, it was older, and I was working on it, and then I was going to try to get it to you guys on time, and I had mounted the paper on wood panel, and over time, because I'm not good about mounting this stuff, I guess, it had warped or buckled. It came up like that, and I was like, how am I going to do this and send this to Brian? And so I just got mad at it, and I ripped the paper off, and I was like, I'm just trying to rip this off and start again. I was like, now what am I going to do? And then I thought of kintsugi, and I was like, I'm going to put this back together and make it into something else. And that was my first try with that. But I liked the whole idea, the symbolic idea of taking imperfections and making the most of it, finding beauty in those imperfections,
Yeah, and this particular piece, I mean, I suggested to include in the mural because it reminded me of Jack Whitten, like one of your professors, like memorial paintings where he would let the paint dry and they become like, cut them up in like little tiles.
Yeah.
And to create these wonderful, like monumental landscapes.
Yeah, no, that's what I've been getting into that too with those smaller works, sort of this mosaic approach, but I'm using leftover paper. Like I'll have several sheets of paper that I cover like with black gouache, this velvet black gouache that I like, gouache, and then the ultramarine flash, and they're both matte and feel velvety, but so they don't look like paper. And so I just started cutting up this paper and throwing it in there because I was also using scraps of the leftover pieces of newsprint that I put shellac on, and they were turning into these hard little chips. I was like, I like how this looks, and I was just throwing it onto the painting. One of them was from my show at Klaus 2023, and it's upstairs too. It's got blue in it. It's called Crying in the Mirror, when I observed my little niece looking at herself as she was crying. It was very diva-esque, but it was so cute. I was just watching her, and she's like, and then it would just get bigger, like, and she's looking at herself the whole time. I'm like, this is too cute. I don't want to laugh because this is a serious moment for this little 6-year-old. But I thought of that crackling effect and a mirror cracking, but just having fun with it a little bit, because I don't want people to think I'm just standing around crying in the mirror. It came from a story.
Well, thank you, Erika. And
Thank you.
today is the last day for the exhibition, so you have until 5 p.m. to go up and see Crying in the Mirror, and we do have several bathrooms around here with mirrors that you can, yeah. But we have like a couple of minutes for any questions from the audience, if anybody has one from Erika. I see.
I wondered if you have published a book with some of your work.
I have their catalogs, a few catalogs from, but I was with this gallery, which shall remain unnamed because he's such a jerk, but he did a great catalog. So I do have that, but I don't have any books yet. I haven't quite reached that. I'm getting there.
Yeah. And we have a small booklet we printed with some installation photos, and I can get you one. Any other?
Yeah, so I was just curious about.
Oh, I know you. Yeah.
Yeah, you
We follow each other on Instagram, and he's like, I'm going to try to make it, so I recognize.
Thank you for coming.
Very grateful to be here.
Thank
Very
you.
grateful to witness and get to see the show. But I wanted to ask you about like how music plays a role in your work, especially your later abstract work. I could see color and pattern that has always played a role.
Yeah.
And I really link that to Jack Whitman's book, Notes from the Woodshed.
I know, that's a great book.
So I just kind of want to get your ideas on how like vibration, sound, color play in your work. I understand environment does, and how like that energy, like maybe your musical influences, how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because in the past year, I haven't listened to any music, but my music is driven, my work, my paintings look like that energy from music. And I have an extensive collection. I have a diverse collection of music that I listen to. Like, I'll look at a painting sometimes like, oh yeah, that was Miles Davis kind of blue right there. Or, you know, maybe those are the specials up in that corner. Or, you know, there's Leonard Skinner or something. You know, I'll just know like what I was listening to, and God only knows how I got to that sound, but it will be in there. And that drives the energy, the starting energy to like, if I need to work fast, it's got to be a faster tempo. When the painting requires more detail, like this work, which I'm always not in love with, the slower, it'll be a mellow sound. But it's just strange that now, maybe because I know over time and experience how I'm starting the painting, I'm less reliant on the music to get me going. But I'll find my way back to it. I mean, sometimes I will listen to something, but for the most part, nothing. Or I have these, I don't do streaming, but I have my CDs and my Bose CD player, and I'll put bird songs on. And I'm in the city, in Brooklyn. It's the BQE, Brooklyn Queens Expressway, is right outside my window, and hundreds upon thousands of cars and trucks are passing every second. And it's creating a little rhythm for me. So it's like, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm tuned into that now. So there's a sound, there's something happening. Plus, I do like hearing people in the neighborhood talking as they're walking below outside. So I'm tuned into different sounds now, very, very basic sounds. I also have a CD that my roommate from high school gave to me, and they're Buddhist chants. So there's no music or anything. It's just these deep, resonating voices, and that'll put me in a mood too when I'm doing slower work. And there's the didgeridoo. I like listening. So there's a bass sound that I like that just is meditative. Again, no voices that are discernible. I mean, the Buddhist monk, but they don't sound. They sound like instruments, the way they really tap into that. But that's kind of, I'm very pure and simple right now, and I don't know what that is, but I've got new rhythms and new sounds that are keeping me going. But I like being quiet right now.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels musical. It looks.
It is, no,
Like
I mean,
it's its own music.
yeah, well, the works at home, it's funny because I listen to the TV when I'm doing the works at home, so I love British murder mysteries, like all of the, and
I was
old
wondering
movies.
when that was going to come up. So.
Yeah, British murder mysteries and black and white movies from the 30s and 40s. So I've seen those a zillion times over, so I can just listen to them. I'm actually learning more from not looking at them. I'm finding that I'm so visually inclined that when I'm watching something, I'm looking at all these other details and then I miss the whole plot. I'm like, why was I staring at that guy in the background, like who's playing with the curtains? Like, there's a story going on. But I'm just like looking at everything. But when I'm doing the work at home, I can actually hear it. So I'm like, oh, that's what happened in this story. So these are more about talking and dialogue. But the works in the studio really do feel musical to me. And they are, I think. I just have the soundtrack in my mind. I don't need to hear it right now. Yeah.
That's right. And some of your titles are
Titles
like
come from that too. Yeah. Even when I'm doing the little works, I'm like, "Ooh, that was a good sentence from this movie," and I'll write it down. Yeah.
Right. The big painting in the show upstairs is the Tarzan cry. It's
Yes,
like,
I was trying to phonetically write out Tarzan's yodel. So it's ah ya, ah ya, ya, ya. I don't know how to do that well. Like, ah. I have to do the Carol Burnett thing, I guess. But yeah, that's the title of that painting, because I was looking at Tarzan and all these poor Africans, and I was like, this is a mess. But when I was a kid, I loved it. I just didn't know about racism and how horrible these images were in those old movies that I love to watch. I'm like, okay, I'll just like fast forward over the Sambo type of character here. But anyway, yeah, it's all, it all finds its way in. It's a symbiotic environment wherever I am with the work.
Is there any other questions? Go ahead, Meredith.
Turning the corner to see these smaller works on the side facing the window.
Mm.
And so there's such a difference between the small images. And so I'm wondering if there's any other curatorial experiences you've had where somebody did something interesting so that the viewer could have a different relationship between the little ones and the big ones.
Okay. Oh, phrase that again?
Like
Yeah.
how a curator has arranged your work in a gallery. Like, is there any ways that you've enjoyed seeing them so that people have a different experience between the little and the big?
Yeah, no, I even love the way it's done here. You walk right in and you see those 6 works on paper, earlier ones, and then you go and then you see the mounted panel pieces. And I like even this photograph, how it sort of informs, this little conversation between the larger painting on the left. I'm pointing to this and you have no idea what I'm looking at, but I mean to be up here. So that painting there, which is larger, and then these guys. I do feel like, these are more detailed. There's more marks, smaller considered marks. Yeah. And I was getting into dots too during COVID, like just anything like meditative. I was really channeling the indigenous Australian painting style, because I felt that too. Like I just felt like I was under stress. It was like, it's a stressful time for all of us, but I felt I was tuned into my heartbeat. So I was just like doing boom, 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 again, that sound of just really marking that as I was going through my day, or if I was walking to the grocery store, like I would draw these lines and little dots. And I don't have any of the dot pieces here, but there were a lot of them. But those lines kind of meander a bit in here. And again, that's me like marking where I'm going, what I'm doing, going in circles, going up here,
Like that earlier piece that we showed with all the gold bands.
Yes.
And everything.
Yeah. So it's nice to see them together. I haven't done that in a while, so it's nice to see how these all came together. I don't know if that answered your question fully. Okay.
All right. Well, I wanted to thank everybody for coming today, and thank you, Erika, for being so generous with your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So you have 5 more hours with this work, unless you help me deinstall next week. Okay. All right, thank y'all for coming.
Thank you.